You know how it is right now. Hybrid work is just, well, it's work for so many of us.
Mm-hmm.
Some days you're in the office, some days you're not. And the office itself, it feels like this constantly shifting landscape.
Definitely.
And that leads us to something called occupancy monitoring.
Right.
It's basically about understanding who's actually in a physical space at any given moment.
Yeah, tracking the people.
Now, for ages, companies might have relied on, badge swipes or maybe someone doing a manual head count.
The old ways.
But with hybrid work becoming so widespread, those older methods, they really leave a lot in the dark.
Oh, absolutely. What's really brought the limitations of those older tracking methods into sharp focus is exactly this shift to hybrid models.
Right.
When everyone was in the office, 5 days a week, a rough estimate of occupancy might have been okay, maybe sufficient.
Sure.
But now, with these fluctuating schedules and the real need to make the most of increasingly flexible workspaces, getting a much more precise picture of who is where and when has become essential.
Exactly. So to get a real handle on what's going on, we took a deep dive into the 2025 Enterprise Occupancy Tracking Report by Tango Analytics.
Good source.
Yeah, they spoke with real estate leaders at major companies across North America and Europe late last year. Big players in finance, pharma, manufacturing, all sorts,
Uh-huh. The decision makers.
to get their insights on the technology being used to track people in their buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal today for you is to pull out the crucial findings from this report.
Yep. Distill it down.
We want to give you a clear understanding of the current state of enterprise occupancy tracking, the key challenges these companies are facing, and maybe some of the potential solutions that are emerging
Mm-hmm.
without overwhelming you with, unnecessary detail.
Yeah, cut through the noise. If we think about the bigger picture, you can see how incredibly relevant this is for businesses right now.
Totally.
They're navigating this complex balance between supporting their employees' evolving needs and efficiently managing what are often very substantial real estate portfolios.
Huge portfolios.
This report gives us a valuable look inside the strategies and the hurdles that these large organizations are currently dealing with.
All right, let's get to what we learned, shall we?
Let's do it.
The report asked these real estate experts about their biggest priorities when it comes to managing their properties. And guess what? The vast majority flagged as being in their top two, a whopping 92%.
Let me guess. Cost savings.
Bingo.
Yeah, perhaps not a complete surprise, but the strength of that consensus, 92%, that's notable.
It really is.
What's particularly interesting is how different sectors are prioritizing this. The report points out, for instance, that pharmaceutical companies have an especially strong focus on cost reduction.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with 80% ranking it as their #1 priority.
80%. Wow. That makes sense when you consider it, though. Occupancy monitoring can directly impact a company's financials by identifying areas where space isn't being used.
Right. Dead space equals wasted money.
That then opens up possibilities for reducing their real estate footprint, maybe downsizing or even subletting, depending on their lease agreements. Plus, it allows for optimization of things like lighting and HVAC. You're not wasting energy on empty spaces.
Right, the operational costs.
And those savings can really add up.
It does raise an interesting point, though. How much of these potential cost savings can actually be achieved using those more basic tracking methods we mentioned at the start, like badge swipes?
Good question.
The report makes a good point that for companies with simpler hybrid work arrangements, maybe badge data and reservation systems might give a reasonably good overview.
Okay.
However, the limitations become clear when you're trying to get a more detailed understanding of exactly how space is being utilized across different teams and, at different times.
Right. It's not granular enough, maybe. Now, here's a really interesting regional difference that popped out.
Oh, yeah.
When it came to their #1 priority, North American firms placed a much bigger emphasis on occupant experience.
Ah, the employee side.
Yeah, creating those attractive, supportive, productive work environments. Half of them, 50%, ranked it as their top concern, compared to just 8% of European firms.
Wow, 50 versus 8. That's a significant divergence.
It's a huge difference.
It really highlights a potential difference in strategic focus. North American companies appear to be giving greater weight to employee satisfaction and the quality of the in-office experience.
It smells like it.
The report suggests that occupancy tracking can contribute to this by identifying underutilized or, conversely, overcrowded common areas, those informal meeting spots, for example.
The ones you can't book.
Exactly. Their popularity you might not realize without tracking beyond scheduled bookings.
Yeah.
Could this difference also reflect maybe a more competitive labor market in North America,
Interesting theory.
where employee satisfaction is a greater lever for attracting and retaining talent?
That's a great question. It's like, are people actually using that expensive new collaboration hub you invested in?
Right. Or is everyone still just gathering around the coffee machine?
You wouldn't really know without more detailed data. Then you have the manufacturing and industrial sectors.
Okay, different focus there, I bet.
Totally. Their top priority, with half of them ranking it as number one, was optimizing building operations.
Makes sense. Production lines?
Really focusing on how space is used for production efficiency, occupant experience.
Yeah.
Much less of a concern for them.
Yeah, this really underscores how the specific operational demands of a business heavily influence their priorities. For manufacturing, efficient use of space directly impacts their core production capabilities and overall productivity.
Absolutely.
They're likely looking at occupancy data to pinpoint areas where they can maybe increase output or resolve operational bottlenecks.
Right.
The focus shifts from the individual employee's experience to the overall efficiency of the production facilities.
Okay, let's shift gears now to how these companies are actually structuring their hybrid work policies. What did the report find there?
Well, it's a bit of a mix. The most common approach used by 40% of firms is having team-dependent policies.
So it varies by department.
Exactly. Different teams or departments have different rules about who's in the office and when.
Okay.
Fixed hybrid schedules where employees have specific days they're expected to be in, that was the second most common at 36%.
Right, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office.
Something like that. And then fully flexible arrangements where employees largely choose when and where they work, that accounted for 24%.
Still a decent chunk.
What's fascinating here is how these different approaches inherently complicate the process of occupancy tracking.
Yeah, I can see that.
If you have some teams that are consistently in the office while others operate on a fully flexible model, the patterns of space utilization become much more complex and, frankly, harder to anticipate using just basic methods.
You really need something more dynamic.
You really need more advanced tracking to understand how these different policies are impacting building occupancy and resource demands.
And it seems that smaller firms, those with revenues between, say, $1 billion and $10 billion, they're more inclined to offer that fully flexible work option. About a third of them do.
Interesting. Any reason why?
The report even links this to the idea of attracting talent, suggesting they might use this flexibility as a perk to compete with larger companies that might offer higher salaries.
Ah, that's a really insightful connection. In a competitive job market, offering greater flexibility can be a significant advantage,
For sure.
particularly for smaller companies trying to attract top-tier talent. However, as the report also points out, these fully flexible policies make real-time occupancy management even more critical.
Because it's less predictable.
Exactly, because you have less direct control over when and how employees are using the physical workspace.
So despite leadership generally being supportive of hybrid work, the report found that 30% of firms are still encountering significant challenges.
Still some bumps in the road.
Yeah. And what were some of the main issues? Occupancy problems, along with difficulties in maintaining collaboration and simply accurately knowing who is where at any given time.
The basics are still tricky.
They even gave an example, which I thought was kind of funny, but also frustrating. Employees who were physically in the office needing to jump on Zoom calls with colleagues who were also in the office
Oh, I've heard of that happening.
because they couldn't easily coordinate being in the same physical meeting space.
That example really resonates, doesn't it? It highlights a breakdown in some of the intended benefits of being physically together in the office.
Totally defeats the purpose sometimes.
And this is precisely where better occupancy management enabled by the right technology can play a crucial role.
How so?
The report mentions how advanced reservation systems that allow employees to see each other's schedules can help bridge these coordination gaps.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
So you can see who's planning to be in.
Right. This is the kind of frustrating experience that you, our listener, might be encountering in your own workplace, and it highlights the need for better occupancy insights.
Definitely relatable for many, I'm sure. So how much of their total real estate are these big companies actually tracking then? Are they tracking everything?
Well, no, not even close for many. The report revealed that a majority, 60% of them, are tracking occupancy in less than 75% of their buildings.
Less than 3/4. And remember, these are large organizations. they could have vast amounts of untracked space.
That statistic is quite revealing. It suggests that even among these large enterprises, there's a substantial portion of their property portfolio where they lack comprehensive visibility into how it's being used.
Why not track it all?
The reasons they give are pretty practical. Cost, primarily.
Right.
Also, the perception that some locations either don't have enough people or maybe serve highly specialized functions that don't warrant the investment in tracking.
Like a lab or something, maybe.
Right, or even the concern of just being overwhelmed by too much data.
Data overload, yeah. But the report makes a really key point.
Yeah.
If you're not tracking it, you can't really optimize it.
Can't manage what you don't measure.
Exactly. Whether your goal is to save money, improve efficiency, or enhance the experience of the people using the space. Interestingly, North American firms are tracking occupancy in fewer of their buildings compared to their European counterparts.
It's another regional split.
Yeah. The report suggests a potential link to the slower rates of return to the office that we've observed in North America.
That's a plausible connection. If fewer employees are consistently utilizing the office space, there might be less of an immediate driver to invest in comprehensive tracking technologies.
Less urgency, maybe.
Conversely, in regions where in-office attendance is higher, the need for detailed occupancy data to effectively manage resources and space allocation would likely be more pressing.
Makes sense. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the really large players, those with revenues over $10 billion, they tend to track occupancy across a greater proportion of their building portfolio.
Yeah, that adds up. They have more resources and a potentially much larger return on investment if they can optimize their extensive real estate footprint.
Right. The scale makes it worth it.
Absolutely. For these large organizations, even small percentage improvements in efficiency or reductions in unused space can translate into very significant cost savings.
Millions, probably.
And they also face the logistical challenge of ensuring a large and diverse workforce has access to the resources they need, making comprehensive occupancy tracking even more valuable.
Okay, let's talk about the actual technology being used then. What are they using?
The report found that most companies, 68%, so over 2/3, are using at least 2 different sources of data for occupancy tracking, not just one.
Okay, layering the data and the single most popular method.
Good old badge data, used by 76% of them.
Still the king, huh?
Seems like it, but it's usually combined with something else, like meeting room and desk booking data.
Right, the reservation systems.
Yeah, 56% of firms use that combination badge plus booking data.
That layered approach makes logical sense. Badge data gives a basic count of who entered a building,
Yep. Who's in the door?
while reservation data provides insights into how bookable spaces are being utilized. By combining these, companies can get a more detailed picture than either source could provide on its own.
True, but as the report points out, these methods still don't give a full view of, say, permanently assigned workspaces or those informal, non-reservable areas we talked about.
Right, the gaps are still there. Here's something that surprised me, though. No firms in the study relied solely on sensors for tracking.
Oh, really? Not at all.
Nope. While 29% did use sensors, it was always in combination with other methods.
Huh.
It makes you wonder why we're not seeing more companies fully embracing sensor technology on its own.
Yeah, you'd think sensors would give the most accurate picture. The report touches on some likely reasons for this.
Like cost again?
Cost is a big one, yeah. Sensors can be a more sophisticated and, crucially, a more expensive solution to both implement and maintain.
Right, the installation and upkeep.
Companies might be starting with lower cost, readily available data like badge and reservation systems to establish a baseline understanding before committing to a larger investment in sensor technology.
Testing the waters first.
Exactly. Also, badge and reservation systems often serve other vital functions beyond just occupancy tracking, like security and resource management, so they're already there.
True, they're multi-purpose. And what about those newer sensorless network tracking solutions, like monitoring Wi-Fi, Ethernet connections? Are people using those?
Very few, actually. The report indicates that only a tiny percentage, 4%, in fact, are currently using these.
Only 4%. Wow.
However, it highlights their potential as a less expensive way to gain broader visibility compared to just badges or booking systems. It might offer a good middle ground.
It makes you think that if more companies were aware of this option, that cost barrier they mentioned might not seem so significant. Cheaper than sensors? Maybe more data than badges alone?
That's a really key point. Sensorless network tracking offers a compelling alternative by leveraging a company's existing IT infrastructure.
Using what you already have.
Right. It can provide a wider view of occupancy than badge data alone without the significant upfront costs and ongoing maintenance associated with traditional sensors.
So why the low adoption?
The low adoption rate might simply reflect a lack of broader awareness and understanding of these newer solutions and their potential benefits. Maybe it's just not on people's radar yet.
Could be. Now, how well do these occupancy tracking efforts actually align with what businesses are trying to achieve?
Yeah.
What are the main use cases?
The report asked about various use cases, and it appears that hybrid work initiatives and real estate planning.
Like deciding on the office footprint.
Exactly. Things like deciding whether to reduce or expand their office footprint, those had the strongest alignment with business needs. Around a third of respondents reported high alignment in these areas. That makes sense. That aligns with what we've discussed.
Yeah.
Occupancy data is directly applicable to understanding the impact and effectiveness of hybrid work policies and for making informed decisions about long-term real estate strategy. Knowing precisely how space is being used is absolutely crucial when you're considering office redesigns, consolidations, or expansions.
Couldn't agree more. Interestingly, every single company reported at least moderate alignment with using occupancy tracking for return to office initiatives.
Okay, measuring RTO success.
And for making adjustments to maintenance and servicing, like cleaning based on actual usage.
That seems like a pretty obvious win-win. Smarter cleaning schedules.
Absolutely. For return to office strategies, occupancy data helps to gauge the success of mandates and identify any potential bottlenecks or resource constraints as more employees return.
Let's see if the plan is working.
And for maintenance, a usage-based approach is simply more efficient and cost-effective than a fixed schedule. Why clean an empty office as frequently as one that's heavily used? Saves money and resources. Here's a bit of a surprise, though. The really large firms, the $10 BE plus ones, actually reported less alignment with space optimization compared to the smaller firms.
Wait, less alignment on optimization? You'd think with their massive property portfolios, they'd be all over optimizing every square foot.
I know. That does seem counterintuitive at first glance.
So what's the explanation?
Well, the report suggests that this might be because truly comprehensive space optimization, beyond just basic reservation data, often requires more advanced and potentially more costly tracking technologies.
Like the sensors or network tracking we talked about.
Exactly. Given that larger firms cited the initial technology investment as a major barrier.
Right, 70% of them.
They might be more hesitant to make that significant leap for comprehensive optimization across their entire vast portfolio. Maybe the cost-benefit isn't perceived as highly across the board.
Interesting. The sheer scale makes the investment daunting, even if the potential savings are also huge. So what's preventing more companies from fully embracing occupancy tracking then? Let's circle back to the barriers.
Well, the number one barrier, cited by nearly half of them overall, and like you said, a staggering 70% of the really big players, is the initial cost of implementing the technology.
The sticker shock.
Definitely. The ongoing costs of maintenance and upgrades are also a significant concern. It's not just a one-time purchase.
No, the total cost of ownership, the cost factor really stands out as a major hurdle.
Clearly.
Even though the potential for significant cost savings through better space utilization is a top priority for many, the upfront investment and the recurring expenses associated with some of these more advanced tracking technologies are clearly a major deterrent.
Holding them back.
Especially for larger organizations that need to scale these solutions across numerous buildings.
It's not just about the financial investment, right? There's the people aspect, too.
Absolutely. Privacy concerns are a significant consideration across the board. No company dismissed them as insignificant.
People don't necessarily like feeling watched.
Exactly. We've seen examples in the past where employees have raised concerns, sometimes quite strongly, about being tracked in the workplace.
Yeah, pushback is real.
The privacy aspect is definitely a critical factor that companies need to address thoughtfully. Even if the data collected is anonymized, the perception of being monitored.
The big brother feeling.
Right. That can create discomfort and potential resistance among employees. This is where those sensorless solutions might offer a potential advantage.
How so?
As they tend to operate more discreetly without visible hardware and often rely on anonymized network data. Maybe less intrusive feeling.
Potentially less creepy, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to how mature these companies consider themselves to be in their occupancy tracking capabilities, what did the report say? Are they experts?
Far from it, actually. It's quite interesting. Nobody surveyed considered themselves to be very mature. Not one. And very mature meant having fully up-to-date technology in place and using it for advanced applications like, say, sustainability initiatives.
Okay, so no one's reached that level yet.
Nope. The majority, almost two-thirds, 64%, saw themselves as fairly mature,
And what does fairly mature mean?
primarily using tracking for basic space optimization, but not really proactively investing or innovating beyond that.
So doing the basics, but not pushing the envelope.
Pretty much. This really highlights a significant gap between the adoption of technology and the full potential of the data being collected.
They have the data, but aren't fully using it.
Exactly. Even companies that are using multiple tracking solutions don't necessarily feel they are fully leveraging the insights for a wide range of business benefits. It suggests that the challenge isn't just about gathering the data, but about having the capabilities and strategies in place to effectively analyze it and apply those insights to various business needs beyond simply saving on real estate costs.
It's the operationalizing part that's hard.
That seems to be a big piece of it.
And speaking of applying the data, the report looked at data integration. Where were they connecting this occupancy data?
Well, most firms are integrating their occupancy data with their space management software. 56% do that, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah, logical connection.
And also with their digital security solutions, 52%. That also seems like a pretty logical integration point.
Space and security.
These initial integration points are logical first steps because they address core operational needs. Space management platforms can leverage real-time occupancy data to optimize layouts and resource allocation more effectively.
Makes the space planning smarter.
While integrating with security systems can enhance access control and overall building safety.
Got it. Finally, let's talk about speed. Real-time data. How common is that?
Reasonably common, actually. The report found that 56% of firms have access to real-time occupancy analytics.
Over half. That's pretty good.
It is. And here's a key takeaway from that. All of these companies with real-time capabilities were using at least 2 different tracking technologies.
Okay, the layered approach again.
But only about a third of them were actually using sensors.
Oh, so you don't necessarily need the most advanced sensor technology to gain real-time insights.
That's a really important finding. It demonstrates that by strategically combining readily available data sources, like badge swipes and reservation data, and processing that information efficiently,
Maybe with the right software.
companies can still gain valuable real-time insights into how their buildings are being used. This can lower the barrier to entry for companies that are looking to move beyond just historical reporting and gain more immediate operational awareness.
That's encouraging. So to sum it all up then, it sounds like a lot of companies are sitting on a significant amount of occupancy data,
They have the numbers.
but they're still sort of figuring out how to fully unlock its potential beyond just basic space optimization.
Yeah, scratching the surface maybe.
And this is despite the fact that things like cost savings and creating a positive office environment are top priorities for them. There's a disconnect.
Precisely. The report really underscores that the core challenge isn't necessarily a lack of available technology,
The tech is there, mostly.
but rather about developing more effective strategies to operationalize the data they are already collecting. It's about evolving from simply knowing how many people are in a building to truly understanding how they are using the space.
The behaviors, the patterns.
Right, and then leveraging those insights to achieve a broader range of crucial business objectives, cost, experience, efficiency, maybe even sustainability down the line.
Which leads us to this final thought for you, our listener, to consider. Think about all the data that your own organization might already be gathering. Badge swipes, room bookings, Wi-Fi logs maybe.
Data you might already have access to.
How could you potentially leverage those insights more effectively to address your biggest challenges? Whether those are related to reducing costs, improving employee satisfaction, or even enhancing the sustainability of your operations.
Yeah, what questions could that data answer for you?
What overlooked data points might hold a key piece of the puzzle? Take a look around your own workplace. Think about the information floating around, and really consider the untapped potential of the information you might already have at your fingertips.